So every once in a while I get people reaching out to me via email, looking for advice, looking for help, usually emerging composers getting their start or looking for how to get a gig in the business or how to move their careers forward. I think it's really neat to see that perspective from where they are and to be able to look back at my own career and think, what would be the most helpful piece of advice or encouragement that I could give to them. In this one case, a very young composer named Aiden, he's only 16 years old. He's already thinking about his media composition career. Awesome, way to go. Reached out to me, and he had a very specific ask. He asked me, what advice would I give to my younger self? What could I have said to my younger self that would have really impacted me? I thought that was a great question. I think it's, generally speaking, a really interesting exercise to do, not only for the benefit of others that might be coming up into the position where you're at, but also for yourself to look back and say, what kind of advice would you have given your younger self? And then to go, well, maybe is there something in that advice that I can use right now? Some of that advice that I gave to Aiden, I look at and I'm going, you know what, it still applies. I can still use this. And then you can play this sort of imaginary game or a thought experiment where you cast yourself 20, 30 years down the line and you imagine what kind of person you are at that point. And then looking back from that position, you go look back into this position you're in now and you think, what advice would I give myself right now? So that you can look at your current position in a more objective way almost. It's a different perspective, almost like putting a mirror up to what you're doing. So one thing about advice, and this is something I said to Aiden as well, is that all advice is essentially bad advice if you don't consider the context in which it's given, right? My experiences, my desires, my thoughts, each person is different. They start with different things. They're in different positions in their lives. They want different things. They have different beliefs, and they start with a different baseline in terms of their skills. So your good advice without that context might be either irrelevant to them, it might be too advanced and too confusing, it might be too obvious and they already know this and they've been living with that for a long time, or it might be so completely left of center or possibly even out of date. One of my mentors once said to me that he can't really advise me on how to build my career at this point because the business has changed so much. So that actually was a very helpful piece of context. At any rate, I thought this would be kind of a cool thing to share with everyone. My personal context-based pieces of advice, casting myself back in time to my younger self, what would I have told that person to help them move their career forward? So number one, go for it. I often let fear hold me back and rationalized my way out of taking action. I may have missed some opportunities and wasted time because of this. I think if nothing else, this is like the number one piece of advice that I would give, and I still think that this is relevant for me and most people today. We do tend to rationalize ourselves out of action. Yeah, I could go down this route. Yeah, I could take this chance, but it's risky and it might not work out. How many times have you thought of something you thought was the coolest idea ever and you sat on it just a little too long and then it kind of got a little stale, and when you look back and you're like, is that actually a good idea? Maybe I'll just move on. It might have been a great idea and you just let it sit too long. That can apply to, writing a piece of music and completing it. It can be reaching out to that person you wanted to reach out to. It could be, starting that project that you think is really cool. So go for it. This one is really context-based for me. It says, consider Hollywood and make the jump. If you have the skills, the drive, energy, and stamina, and ambition to go big time, then do it as soon as possible. Even if you find out it's not for you, at least you'll know and you can say you gave it a shot. For me, I started in this particular career being a screen composer for film and TV pretty late. I was already 27 by the time I switched into this career from being a musician in general and making this my focus. So by that time, I was just only getting started with the technology, and even, at 27, I was learning how to score. I was learning how to do syncing and time code and learning how to lay things up to picture, and the whole vocabulary of music to film was still very new. So I had no business going down and, trying to be someone's assistant because I had no skills and no knowledge. For someone young, who has got that drive, ambition, and skill, and they could go down and assist someone that is in a more advanced position than they, could be a massive door opener. They can introduce them to people that they would not otherwise be introduced to, be in situations and learn things much faster than you would otherwise. I've gone it alone in my career for the most part, and it's been great in some ways, and it's been, tough going in others. So if you have the opportunity, you might want to consider it and do it when you're young and you have lots of energy and you can, do the grind without suffering too much for it. Number 3, leverage your existing and new relationships more. Both give and take. Provide maximum value to people and then ask for what you want. In brackets, a favor, a recommendation, an internship, etc. One thing I found over the years is that I could do more to move myself forward by using the existing contacts and asking for things from those contacts than just getting a new contact and squirreling it away in my big book of names. You know, the black book is only as useful as you make it. And I think a lot of people don't leverage it enough to reach out to people and say, thank you for this great work we did together, or this favor you did, and then to ask for something or to offer something. Hey, do you need anything? And to make yourself valuable to those people. It's got to be a give and take. You can't just be out of the blue. You can't just sort of like show up on someone's doorstep and go, hey, can you do something for me? But that kind of idea that you're constantly nurturing relationships and keeping up with people and making sure that you show them that you care about their lives as well and that you have an interest in what they're doing. And then when the time is right, to give them an opportunity to help you. And people want to do that. They want to see you succeed. So again, that's a big one. Leverage the existing relationships that you already have. Do your thing, and a lot of it. What makes you unique / different? That's what will make you stand out. Nurture that and resist the shiny object syndrome where you try to sound like the latest and hottest scores or composers. I mean, this is sort of one of those cliched things that everyone says on every panel and workshop ever. You gotta find your voice. But again, it is actually a really strong piece of advice despite being cliche. You gotta do you because everyone else is taken. And I think the trick with finding your voice is it's not about, you know, like trying to find something that's hidden. Your voice will eventually come out. You just got to stop yourself from trying to sound too much like other people too often. A little bit of, you know, imitation is good in order to learn and to develop your abilities in instrumentation, arrangement, orchestration, and writing in general. But you also want to make sure that you don't neglect just that thing that turns you on and makes you go, you know, this is my thing. I really like the way this sounds. These kinds of chord progressions, this kind of melody, this style of writing. Only emotion endures. This is something I got from a Tim Paris podcast, and I don't know where the quote comes from. But this is the idea that, you know, fancy techniques, mixing, orchestral fireworks, it's good to have, but it's not the main thing. The things that grab people in music and story are often the most simple but elegant. So, you know, the thing that you remember is that thing that gave you an emotional chill or made you feel something. It's not the thing that was technically brilliant or was just like overwhelming and confusing. Those things have their place as well, but for the most part, people remember things that hit them in their heart, not their brain. Leverage your unique talents more. Besides writing music, what are your unique gifts? For me, it's asking great questions and leading discussions, which eventually led me to being able to meet and interview Hans Zimmer for a room full of directors and producers at a major film festival. This gets me in rooms and in front of people that my music on its own can't. Why? Because it's unique and few people do it well. Media composition, on the other hand, is a very saturated field full of highly talented people in competition. You can change the odds by adding stuff to your arsenal beyond just being a composer. That's probably one of the most oblique or unobvious pieces of recommendation, where you take things that are not necessarily directly related to the music you're making, but that might be talents that you can use to get yourself in front of people and to get noticed by people. There's all these different ways that you could utilize talents that you already have and offer things to people that maybe aren't as common or aren't as a part of a market that's so saturated as music composition, where everyone is in competition. Maybe it's web design, maybe you're a good interviewer, maybe you're a great writer. You know, there's a lot of different talents that you might utilize in order to get yourself in positions where you might not otherwise get just on the basis of your music alone. Okay, so that's the roundup. The pieces of advice I'd love to send back in time to my younger self that would hopefully motivate me and get me on the right direction as quickly as possible. It's a great exercise to do, because once you have those lists of things that you'd send back to your younger self, you can look at them and go, is there anything in there that, you know, maybe I'm not applying now? And then you can start to apply it and hopefully see some more momentum in your life and your career right now. And as well, to put yourself into the future, cast your mind into the future and imagine your future self successful in the place you want to be, looking back at who you are now and what you're doing now and imagining what that person would say. So I hope you apply some of these techniques. I hope they're helpful for you. Let me know in the comments if you have done this or if you're intending on doing it and what your results are and if you found it helpful. Give me a like on this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.